Yeah, so we only have one topic today. I think we just want to talk about the refactoring work, with some like the formatting stuff around there. Let me find that pull request. That's probably good to be looking at that more than the other pad right now. Should have it around here. And that's my testing. Let's see. There it is. Yeah, so we want to talk about this. Which looks like are some actual comments. Do you want to just go through these comments and stuff? Or do you want to have like a more general, there's like a general topic we want to do in relation to this?
I mean, I think for the most part, these are just kind of nits. They're not really too important. I think the outstanding question I had is like just the packaging structure, that kind of discussion. So I was still trying to figure this out. Like, yeah, the comment you have down here, this one is a good example. Do we want to name this Ceph-ADM lib? It feels kind of awkward.
So I don't think we can name it Ceph-ADM if there's a Ceph-ADM.py present, which is technically not the case inside the zip app, but when we're importing it for the tests, I get your point. I think it's a good point. I actually would prefer to take the shorter context than Ceph-ADM context, but I couldn't come up with anything better that was very unambiguous about the new package name that didn't also have a potential conflict. If we were starting from scratch, I'd totally agree Ceph-ADM is better than Ceph-ADM lib. But yeah, we have to deal with the fact that we're already doing weird stuff in the unit tests to import Ceph-ADM under the name of Ceph-ADM. So
yeah, got it. And are we trying to also ensure we can run this from the source tree when it's?
I'd like to. I think that's a good thing. And that's, again, one of the reasons I want to keep the new stuff a real package as much as possible. Right. I'm trying to accomplish a couple goals. One is change as little as possible. Have things use as normal Python practices as I can, and be unambiguous, which kind of ends up us kind of having to be very explicit and verbose in places.
Right. Yep.
But I would happily take the other suggestion of shortening Ceph-ADM context to context. That's kind of the way I originally had it in my prototype, and then I think while I was talking to Adam, we made it longer. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on that aspect, Adam? The easier part.
Like just this part. Yeah, I don't really care if you call it context, as long as there's not going to be any sort of conflict with anything else.
Yeah, I don't think there'll be other contexts in under Ceph-ADM lib.
Okay, yeah, I'd be okay with it because that's kind of what we do. Even when we pass it around, we usually just call it like CTX. Like it's not like we have a big object called Ceph-ADM context that we have to pass. So, well, maybe that's the name of the class, but I think I'd be okay with the shorter name for that if you want. Then I guess for this other part, I mean, I'm not super picky on what name we have. It sounded like maybe Ceph-ADM would cause us to have to like move things around or whatever, just because we still have the Ceph-ADM.py.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and how about this idea? If you scroll down to the following comment, I think it's kind of related. There was this where there was a comment talking about renaming the py file to main in the zip app.
Yeah.
And so maybe like, what if we had a Ceph-ADM subdir and then we just moved that file over into the subdir and then we just did a copy tree from that one subdirectory. So instead
of like source Ceph-ADM.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then we can have like the talks, build related, whatever stuff in the higher level directory, but the actual module underneath this Ceph-ADM subdirectory. Would that work? potentially.
I think Ceph volume does that, doesn't it?
Kind of. It's so we need a main at the root, and if we keep the dir struct, we are going to have to end up duplicating it, or I think it's doable, but I think it's more convoluted, if I may say that. It's a good idea, but I don't know. I kind of hesitate to make that trade-off.
What I was thinking I just mentioned Ceph volume randomly, is I think what they do there is they have a Ceph dash volume here, and then they have pretty much all the actual code under Ceph underscore volume. This just has like a setup.py and some talk stuff. Then they have a subdirectory where they have everything. They even have their main.py in here, it looks like.
Yeah.
And then they have
we can certainly move to that model. Again, I'm trying to take baby steps with the changes to Ceph ADM PY. And there is one other thing I just thought of as I was talking. Moving Ceph ADM PY will further make backporting a little difficult if we have to backport things. Fixes. I mean, it's not a big deal because we're already making a lot of pain in this area, but it's another droplet of churn there.
I think we're already going to be in that situation because isn't the intent to have main kind of just be the main function and then everything else moves elsewhere? Right?
Yeah. I guess I'm personally willing to trade off the verbosity for not having to make more changes. But, obviously I'm not the only person hacking on this code.
I think the biggest struggle I had with the Ceph ADM lib is it implies we're providing some sort of public library, even though it's not. Kind of looks awkward.
I don't know. I guess I just simply don't agree. It's a private library. I mean, I did say something to Adam, like we should probably update the developer docs or add some sort of README to explain some of the stuff that we're doing here. Maybe not in this initial PR, but maybe right after it merges, have a separate PR for the docs explaining the new structure and how to hack on it in the future. We could probably just put a note there that this is the library for Ceph ADM, not a library to use Ceph ADM externally.
I'm unsure of this one. I don't know.
Here's a random thought. I have no idea if this will work, but there's the Python convention of prefixing things with an underscore. I mean, this might be totally goofy looking, but what if the directory was named underscore Ceph ADM? I mean, I guess the other issue I have is lib is only 3 characters, so that's not the long part of the name. And just because I'm pushing back, don't assume that I don't appreciate the feedback. I really do. It's just that I'm kind of, until I either see a slam dunk easy fix or a really good, like, oh yeah, that's a major problem, I'm kind of inclined to leave it as is.
Yeah, I'm personally kind of a bit indifferent to it. I think I kind of wanted the files to be more organized and easier to sort of go through, and sort of the naming things. We have always been sort of side stuff. So I was going to just say do whatever's easier here. I feel like even if we did all this moving and then at the very end we really decided we were wrong about the naming, I think it wouldn't be that hard to then change the name. Because I don't know. I think splitting up things in the files is the hard part.
I think it would mostly just be moving everything in this lib directory and then modifying all the imports. Just that kind of movement. I mean, I kind of had an initial thought too, like, oh, this is just a lib directory. Let's call it that, which obviously doesn't quite work out with the Python package. But then after I stared at this longer, I realized pretty much all the Python files are in this lib directory, except for the main function file. And then that kind of felt a little weird. It's like, well, why aren't they just all in one module? Make this kind of more like a standard Python package.
Yeah, I think that's the way to move eventually. But the way I kind of see it is a lot of Python projects these days are like at the root of the repo, there's like a src directory or the name let me put it in chat because I'm having trouble spitting it out. Or some just do PKG right in the root of the repo. But both,
Right. Yeah.
I see both conventions almost as equally. I think SRC is a little bit more common these days. And so what I'm kind of envisioning is Ceph's source, Ceph ADM, is equivalent to source in this model. And yes, we have this legacy Ceph ADM.py, but eventually it's going to shrink and shrink and shrink until we can probably, instead of doing a move, we can actually generate the under main py with like a stub that just simply points to something inside of the package. But again, I'm trying to keep things smaller and fewer changes in the initial work. I see that as kind of the end goal as a parent, as opposed to something I want to do up front. I'm trying to think of other like things to call it instead of Ceph ADM lib and nothing. I did briefly think of Ceph ADM int as in Ceph ADM internal, but int conflicts with integer. So
yeah, I don't think I would have picked up on that's what that meant if I read Ceph ADM. I would have thought it was an integer class.
Yeah.
I like Ceph ADM lib better than that one.
Does lib Ceph ADM ring better in your ears, Mike? As in, like, this is the library of Ceph ADM as opposed to a library for using Ceph ADM?
I mean, I guess that would be the more standard way to name it if it were truly a library, but I don't know that it really is. It's just a module.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I think that's why I was kind of like, why are we calling this lib?
Yeah. I guess I tend to think of everything as a library if it's not an entry point script.
Yep. I mean, that's kind of what I had done too, is, okay, what are some examples of some Python modules? And of course, there's a lot of various approaches to this, but I did like the PKG type model that's a little bit more common.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. If we were starting from scratch, I would definitely name the package Ceph ADM, no lib.
Mm-hmm.
It's just I need something to disambiguate it from the current Ceph ADM.py module.
So if like the main file wasn't called Ceph ADM.py, would this problem sort of go away? Is that the thing that's still hard?
Yeah, it would. I mean, then there's another small quibble I would have, which then the directory structure would literally read source Ceph ADM/Ceph ADM, but that's not a huge deal. Just
that's why I referenced the Ceph volume thing. So there is not going to be the first people doing that.
Right.
To me, that makes a little bit more sense, and it kind of fits with the theme of this PR to just kind of take care of that structure all in one go instead of multiple different PRs later. Because I think that's generally what this is about, which by the way, most of this is really actually quite good, because it's just like, here's the file locking routines, let's put them in a file lock.py, and here's the, so the organization of the Python files are great. I think it's just
thanks. No, I know this is what is it?
Yeah.
One of the 3 hardest things in computer science is naming things. So
exactly. I just would rather not go back and rename everything once we become accustomed to this name.
Yeah, and that's why, like, again, I agree with you. I'm okay again, I picked it, so you can kind of assume that I'm okay with keeping Ceph ADM lib even if it's not perfect. It's 3 more characters on top of the name of the thing. Yeah, again, if we were starting from day 0, I totally 100% want to just call it Ceph ADM. I just think this is the least worst option at the moment.
So basically, our options are leaving it like this, or change cephadm.py to like main.py, and then move that into the cephadm lib, which would, I guess, now be called cephadm. Then we have to mess with the imports after that.
Yeah, I think those are probably the 2 viable options.
And I don't think the movement of the main movement to a main.py is really that much work. Seems like that's pretty quick to do. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see that as.
Yeah, it's not. I don't think it's a huge amount of work. I agree. Again, it's a little bit more churn, but it's not a significant more churn. So again, I think Mike and I have kind of like staked out our positions. This is why we need quorum, right? We kind of need a tiebreaker here. Yep. It would be better if we had more people to be like, I have an opinion. Kind of too bad Redo's not around to chip in. But yeah.
Yeah. And I probably should decide, but I don't know, because I've kind of this is more of a discussion of how conforming to Python norms.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just not as familiar with them. So to me, like all these things sound like sort of okay.
Yeah. I mean, if you want, I wouldn't rebase everything. If you want, I can try to implement the changes. And if it either, and I'm definitely going to give you a fair shake. If I do it, I'm going to do it for real. And then say whether, I can pull another branch off of this branch just to mess around with that that aspect of the naming. And I wouldn't have a clean series of patches, but I could do that, see what the delta is, see how it kind of looks and feels afterward, and then we can kind of make another decision. But either way, it's kind of like the same amount of work if you just simply pick Mike's choice, Adam.
Yeah. Yeah, because if you do the test thing, it's the same as just actually doing it.
Yep. Assuming it works. And if it didn't work, I'd immediately jump on chat and tell you. But I don't see it not working. It's just effort.
So I'm sort of indifferent to it. So I guess I would sort of lean towards we could leave it like this, and if we really want to rename it at the end, I really care about getting the files sort of split up and organized for our sake, and then what it looks like externally, if it's like a library or a package or whatever. To me, that's a side thing. So I would lean to it because it's already like this. We could do it like this because I've even already run a test tautology suite on this. And then we could. It sounds like if we wanted to rename it at the end, that's possible. It's just I guess we would be used to the naming convention of cephadm lib. But maybe the fact that we've been used to it for a while would help us understand whether we actually like it or not by the end. And we can rename it. And we'll have more opinions by then. We could ask Redo or whatever, something as well. But I'm very unopinionated on it. So my, I guess, natural thing is just to say, well, this one's already like this. This is fine.
It's not a deal breaker if we don't change it, is it, Mike?
No. I mean, a name's just a name, right? I'm not going to argue that to death.
Yeah, then we could do this one, like this context one. I think nobody's going to have an issue with.
Right.
I haven't read the other 2 comments in here.
Yeah.
But
I haven't gotten to my Ceph mailbox yet, so I hadn't seen the other comments, but they seem pretty small.
I did want to understand why we disabled the doc.io count in the Was that
that
somewhere, or was that?
Yeah, so the constants that it was looking for got moved to a different file. So it's a combination of me being lazy. So I'm glad you pointed that out because it definitely needs to be called out. But I also kind of don't think it's necessary. So I'm kind of inclined to delete the line in its own commit, of course. But the comment was meant to be temporary, but I forgot about it. We can talk about that aspect. I think the idea was to prevent Ceph images that referred to Docker IO, but I think it's kind of a misguided thing because we can't control where all of our images are coming from. I mean, we can if we want to like rebuild everything, but if someone is like, I need this image and it's on Docker IO and the count goes up, we're just kind of fiddling with it's like make work. Every time you make a change, you've got to fiddle with the toxini file, which to me is like, yeah. I mean, I appreciate the idea to limit the use of Docker IO because Docker IO is rate limiting. But if Docker IO is the canonical location for a particular image, let's say it's some monitoring stack thing, that's just where it lives.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't remember exactly the type, but I thought this was actually implemented before we'd actually moved to Quay for the Ceph images.
No.
Like, I thought it was more just like we have this many ones and we're trying to track them for like downstream purposes or whatever.
No, if that's the case, it feels like it belongs in its own place with its like dedicated tooling and not just kind of an afterthought run after Flake 8. But again, it would help to know what the intention was behind that line because
yeah, I'm trying to find.
I think it was for the normalize image case. I think it was this PR potentially. Remember, it was Sebastian that had done that because we're having images creep in to the code. I'm trying to remember the context here.
I just found the committee edited in. This one says we have to be super careful adding any new hard-coded registry names to the code base. Let's make this an informed decision next time.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, I guess my like I remember there was a whole thing about the fully qualified names and the short names. Maybe this was around when we were moving from Docker to Quay and we were having issues.
Is there a tracker on that PR? It might have more description about the actual code.
Yeah, that's funny because I, in other experience, generally try to use fully qualified rather than unqualified. So it feels a little weird to see a project moving away from fully qualified names.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like this, we had a thing, I don't know if this will still work. We had like a normalized thing here. And it was trying to take short names and the full names, and it was using docker.io as a default. That's where this sort of came from.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, Podman, certain versions, you might be able to configure this off. Try to push you away from using unqualified. It's a security thing, because if say a popular project starts on Quay, right, and it's like Quay.io foobar, someone notices this, then they register Docker.io foobar. Anything that checks Docker.io first, which is probably most things, you've now basically squatted on that name and you can do nefarious things. That's why Podman is pushing people to not use unqualified registry names.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely prefer the fully qualified names. I don't know if you'd be willing to like try to enforce that.
I mean, I can certainly fix the line instead of just removing it, which is what I was just doing temporarily. I think we just need to scrape the file. Well, the interesting thing is now that we have more than one file, if we only scrape the what I was about to say, which is scrape constants py, but then people can start. You could say add a default string argument to some random function that refers to Docker.io, and it wouldn't find it. but I don't know if that's what.
Yeah, so I found this other comment I had. It looks like Athy asked about this a
Yeah.
couple years ago, and he said, "I'd like to allow folks to change this number in their downstreams in order to make sure no new references to Dr. are creeping unnoticed." Yes, I was okay with.
And I think that's the important point there, because I think, sometimes there's left-hand, right-hand things occurring, and it helps cat downstream if new images or containers are being added that you may want to build downstream or provide a downstream replacement.
Yeah. I know, like, for our downstream, we always have to replace all the images. We can't have any of them left in there that point to upstream stuff.
All right. Well, I all right. I'll fix the line. It looks like I have to break out the old xargs too, but I'll change it so it scrapes Ceph-ADM PY and everything inside of the package dir pipe. So do an xargs, find xargs grep kind of pipe thing. Ick.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of commits referencing this. To say Ceph as well.
It also kind of makes me want to write it in like a separate Python script that we can maintain separately, but that's probably more work than it's worth at this point.
Yeah. I think we've done it easier with some weird xargs line. I mean, even like, I don't know what it does now, but if you look at this one from before that I was reviewing on, like, this is already doing some stuff. So
here's just, I don't know. This is probably the wrong thing to say, but what if we converted this to a dedicated PyTest test? Like, if we had a file under like the tests dir that said something like test underscore, code contents, and in there was a test that actually just opened the files and read them instead of having this inside of a bash.
It's done in a PyTest. I think that would maybe
you can do anything. It's Python.
It fails on like Flake 8 right now, so I feel like it's always like misleading that it's like
it's at the very least, if I do fix it, I'm gonna make it its own rule and not like this extra thing under Flake 8.
Yeah. So I wouldn't mind that if you wanted to move it under a PyTest. I think and it fits better there than Flake 8.
I will,
because that was convenient before, probably.
I'll give that a whack just to see how difficult it is, because it just strikes me as, you have to do the whole allow list externals thing, and basically say, oh, I'm permitting you to run these special binaries, and and then I'm thinking about bringing find and xargs into the mix. It's just,
Yeah, I mean, so this is using some git ls files, and then it goes into xargs at the end as well. So there's already a bunch of stuff that had to get used or to get it to work before.
Oh, that's PyBind Manager. Okay, so they're doing it slightly differently. In source PyBind, it's doing it with a bash subshell. So I'm assuming bash is in the list of external binaries, which is basically like, why not allow everything? Why not just have star? I don't even know if it's supported, but
yeah, but I guess because this one is multiple files, it couldn't be done as simply as the binary.
Yeah. So, well, at the very least, now I could just copy that and at least have them be the same.
Yeah, so I think it still would be nicer under a unit test, but if you don't want to look into it because it is kind of like a side thing, it probably would work.
Now I'm more inclined to do that now that I realize it's in multiple places. It's not just in the talks INI for Ceph-ADM. It's in this talks INI, and then might as well just harmonize them.
All right. I mean, that's fine with me for now. So this is not the point of what we're doing, so I don't have to think too long.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you want to do that, I think that will solve this bit.
Yeah, and those changes should not affect. You should not need to rerun Toothology for that.
Yeah, just the Flake 8 will pass. It runs a make check, so we'll know if it's not working.
Yeah.
Or I think does it run a make check? I don't know if Flake 8 runs. I think it does. It definitely does.
Oh God,
I know I've seen failures before.
I can't put it under its own environment because the stupid friggin' I'd have to touch the CMake files if I want to add a separate environment for it.
Yeah, so I think it would have to somehow be in our existing like Pi 3 if you wanted to move it.
Yeah, I'll just literally copy and paste and then adapt what's going on inside of the source PyBind one. I will maybe in my anger, I'll come back another day and do a separate PR to clean them both up and make them less wonky. What that will probably require touching the CMake files too.
All right, yeah, definitely don't do that right now. Then if it's a lot of work,
and now I'm like motivated to change. I'll have to learn the CMake macro language in order to make it so I never have to do this again. So it can actually just run the tox command for list envs and just run whatever the default envs are instead of having to explicitly list them all out redundantly in the CMake texts.
All right. But I think for now we'll take the old stuff, and then someday we can get back to this. But probably at lowest possible priority.
Yeah. I like to try and clean things up when I touch them, but sometimes it's
too much to clean.
It's like pulling that thread on the sweater. The whole thing just unravels.
Yeah, because we're already doing a big cleaning project.
Yeah.
All right. Do you want to talk about this random other knit as well over here?
Sure, I'll make that change. I think I was just probably being lazy. They both work. They're both correct in a certain sense, but yeah, I guess you could have a file that's something PYO that doesn't have a dot, and it would. Well, it seems unlikely, but for consistency's sake, with the existing old and swap, I'll just put the dots in.
All right. So I guess you'll directly address these first two. I guess part of this one, and we might hold off on the Ceph ADM lib, the Ceph ADM. I think is what we're sort of ended up on.
That's my preference too, but let's just confirm it. I unless you both say, John, go do the changes, I won't be going and doing the changes today.
Yeah. So I'm sort of indifferent to it, so I just lean towards the one that's already there. It seems to be working. Okay. So we could even ask Orchestrator about it as well when he's back. We want more opinions or something. We could always change it at the end. I said we will get a bit used to it being like this after a while, but I hope it won't be a huge deal. They already changed like the whole name of Ceph ADM. It wasn't even called that for the first few months, I think. So.
Oh yeah, I think we talked about that one day. We ran across it some really old code. I don't remember what
it was like SH Orchestrator before.
It was actually, I think, Ceph Daemon, and so there were all these CD references everywhere.
Yeah.
I remember we moved it from because all the unit tests used to be CD something, and they became under.
Yeah. That I do remember that CD weird thing, and I was like, what?
Yeah. So this one would be unprecedented. I think maybe doing it this way allows us to move forward. And so we can decide the naming once that's the last problem to get over. Yeah. Sure. This is all just in main right now. It's not like it's going to affect anybody.
Right. It's not set in stone. It'll be a little churn if we do decide to change it, but it's not a biggie.
Yeah. So that's sort of my opinion on it. It doesn't sound like anybody's sort of hard stuck on either way, so it's sort of lean towards the existing one.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else you wanted to go over with this? I think this was really the whole thing we wanted to talk about today.
I guess we didn't address the formatting with Python Black, but generally that looked okay to me. Are you guys happy with that decision?
I'm the one who is trying to impose it on the team, so yes. I try to use it whenever I can. I think what happened is my foray into the world of Go, where there is a language level canonical tool for formatting. You just get used to like, okay, I don't like tabs to indent, but that's what Go format does. And I'm just like, fine, whatever. Go format, run it on your editor at save time or whatever. And you just make peace with the fact that the language designers had a particular style in mind, and Black, while it's not at the level of Go format, it's not like a Python core tool. It's pretty widely accepted in the community at this point. So,
Yep.
Yeah, I haven't minded anything I've seen.
I think there's like one or two other ones, but Black's absolutely, from my understanding, the most popular. So, if you heard different, let me know. But I think that's correct.
No, I think that's true, and I generally prefer its style over AutoPep, but
AutoPep used to
it's
do
certainly
some
more
really ugly
consistent.
things sometimes.
Yeah.
AutoPep was usually fine, but it would usually do these things where it would put like one character on its own line or something, just to have the line be like the right length, something like that.
Yeah, and so I updated to the latest Fedora, and the don't mess around with quotes option is still there. So I don't think they're taking that away. I didn't really like dive deeply into the community, but I think that was the only other question mark, and I kind of half-assedly checked it out.
Yeah, I know we
at least for the short term, it should be fine. So if they do make a decision, we can go complain on their GitHub.
Yep.
Yeah, we already have these ones. I saw John running these when we were looking at this, the check black and the format black. They seem to all work fine.
There is one subtle thing I think is worth being aware of. It is in their documentation, but there are places in our code where like the curly braces are expanded onto multiple lines, and the Black documentation, and if you run Black naively, it'll compress them all, and you might be like, oh, that's more ugly. This is one thing where they actually say that we were trying to give you the choice, but you implement it by putting trailing commas in places. So if you put trailing commas after your curly braces or square braces, Black, you're basically telling Black, hey, even if you could compress this all onto shorter lines, don't. Again, I can try and find the docs for this, but it's good to be aware of, because if you're like, oh, it's kind of made an uglier choice, it was better before, and it's all about like an expanded dictionary, just sprinkle a few trailing commas, and then Black will kind of do what you want it to do.
Right. Well, we have issues with getting this to be part of the CI as well. Checkbox stuff.
We'll have this. Yeah. So right now, I'm considering this optional. It's in the talks so that I can run it and you can run it and we all can run it. But it's not mandatory. It won't be mandatory yet. I can do that in a follow-up PR. Yeah. Again, I kind of don't. I don't want to touch the CMake files in this PR. I really don't.
Yeah. So if we do that,
I have a tendency to make massive PRs with like a zillion changes. This one's a nice size. It's enough. It's like medium size. I don't want to make it huge.
Yeah, I mean, it is already like a few thousand lines. So.
Yeah, the line count is high, but the conceptual load isn't too bad, I think.
Yeah. I think half the commits in here are just like Black format.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, I liked it though. I thought the way the formatting was nice, and I didn't see anything that would look like really bad. Where AutoPep occasionally there'd be something I really didn't like.
Yeah, I think we haven't. A lot of the code that it's going to do a real number on, it will be the stuff that's a little older and a little more heavily indented. So like, watch out when it comes time to touch some of the like bigger functions like around adoption or the list function. But I personally think most of its changes are sensible, and the ones I don't like, I have just made my peace with. It's worth it to get the standardized formatting. It just means that if I really want to format something different, I have to make my own language. Fine. That's the modern world.
All right. If I was okay with it, that's what we were talking about. I think it's fine. I like the Black format.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Okay.
All right. Everything else you want to go on about this? or is just need to address the things we've talked about? Sounds like we're good. I was also looking at. I hit the right button. I stopped sharing. Looking at this. Just sort of watching where we are now, because we're definitely a lot farther in. So I guess we're sort of at the very beginning of this phase now. So I saw that. Oh, actually, it looks like you've even copied in some of this stuff into here. I didn't realize this was in this other pad now.
Yeah, we talked about that one day in the office. So I just kind of I popped it in there, cleaned it up a little bit from what I had in my local text file, but I'll probably just go from here from now on, even though I don't love editing in Etherpad. It's a great tool, but it's not a great editor.
It's good for sharing stuff quickly with people, but it's not like lots of actual text editing stuff in here. I guess we're sort of here now. We have these other tasks we'll get to afterwards, but I think we're
so this is basically everything I did either before Adam and I discussed it or during. So some of them are marked as like we looked at them and decided we couldn't move them yet. Stuff like the firewall and the syscontrol.
This one definitely was. These two were.
It does not mean.
Well. That's why.
It does not mean there aren't other low-hanging fruits that we couldn't do as just simple moves, and if we find them, specifically, not agent. Where's the other one? The ones with like fetch underscore. I get a lot of screen corruption when you scroll, so I
think it's the one up here though. The context getters or something. What are they called?
Yeah, so we kind of assumed it would be harder, but when I skimmed the code the other day, that actually might be easy to do. But again, we've kind of, I think Adam and I were like, this initial PR is good enough for now because it gets the pattern going.
Yeah, because it unblocked the rest of your stuff you wanted to do. Because you want to do stuff.
Yeah.
Outside of just reformatting, you want to actually add some new stuff, which is easier to do.
Yes. Logging, I already have a branch for that, and then I need to rebase the daemon identity work on this, so I'll be able to put the new classes inside of the daemon identity py file, and then I still need to change a whole bunch of lines inside of Ceph ADM py.
All right. I think we're okay for now. I don't think we have to try to shove everything we can possibly put into this. I think we have a good amount of stuff.
It's really great for new stuff. Anything that we're adding new, we'll be like, just put like, definitely the rule should be if it's not clearly under one of the existing py files, just make a new file. It's not like, Ceph ADM is pretty big, but we're not going to have thousands of files. We might have like 30 or something at the end. And worst case scenario, if we do find some area needs like a subdirectory, we can also do that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if we had to, like, we considered it for like the service type classes. Like there's like a Ceph iSCSI and a Ceph NFS and all those in there. We can maybe
so that'll definitely be a weekly topic for. There'll be a weekly topic for. What am I trying to say? For the future, a weekly topic for the future. What to do about the various daemon named classes? Because I discussed this briefly with Adam in the office. I was scribbling on a whiteboard, but we want more feedback and thoughts, because I think there's like two directions where we can go, where we can just kind of leave them as they are and move things around, or we could try to have them be a little bit more uniform, because right now they don't really. I like protocols from the typing protocols library. We could look at that. We could look at ABC's abstract base classes, but I think it would be good to have something more uniform. So when the methods on those classes are used, we don't have to do this if ladder thing where it's like, if daemon type equals blah, call this static method on this class. You should be doing it like, be past instance, call specific method. That's the model I would like to see the code base move towards, but there's different roads to get there.
Yeah, we had that like daemon assembler thing or whatever, which I think could take daemon types and give you the class back at least. So we had that plus the typing around the protocols or whatever we want to do it. I think that would
So
a lot of it.
In my current experimental branch, the daemon assemblers are wrappers. They're net new classes that use methods from the current ones. The other option is to start changing the current ones. And I am very much on the fence about which is the right way to go with that.
Yeah, I haven't given it a ton of thought. It's a sort of look ahead.
But anyway, that's a future weekly topic. We're not there yet.
All right. For this week, is there anything else you want to say about this? If I stop sharing again.
I feel the need. I feel a little guilty for. I'm doing air quotes. You can't see me. Winning. So not changing the naming at the moment, but I'll just repeat what I said earlier. I really, really do appreciate the feedback, even if I disagree.
Yep, and no problem. I'm okay with it. So it doesn't hurt my feelings at all. So
all right, I'm having like guilt.
No, don't feel that way.
Right.
I mean, for what it's worth, I struggle to name things too, and often needs someone else to say, what do I call this thing?
Yeah.
It's all right.
This is random, and I kind of feel funny saying this in a meeting. I know it's being recorded, but every so often I bring this topic up. I kind of want to start a website which is a programmer's thesaurus, kind of like a Wikipedia type thing where people can contribute their own stuff, but it would be specifically for programming, because like I'll hit like thesaurus.com or Merriam-Webster or whatever it is to look up synonyms, and it's always like it's like normal English, and I'm like, normal English isn't programmer English, but I need like a I want to call something a container, but I don't want to see container because in the context we're talking about, that's like a OCI or Docker container. I don't want to call it a bag or a list or like I need another word for, So this is an idea I've kind of jokingly brought up on and off for years at this point.
Yeah, it sounds like it'd be useful if it did exist.
I get frustrated. And I'm like, man, I really wish I had that programmer's thesaurus right now.
Yeah, it would be nice. It'd make it a lot easier. We'd have like a list of things to pick from instead of just trying to like come up with this stuff out of thin air. All right. Anyway, I think we're sort of talking about this. Was there anything else you wanted to briefly touch on? We only have about 10 minutes anyway for the hour. Yeah, seems like we're okay. I'll stop sharing and end the stream. If I get it to work, we'll call it there.